Yo, what's happening people, and welcome back to the channel. In this video I'm going to be showing you an updated version to my FL Studio default template. I'm going to be going over how it works and then showing you exactly how it's made so you can go ahead and make your own version that's going to be perfect for your workflow. If you're new around here, then do me a favour and turn that subscribe button grey, and if you want to be notified every time I drop gems like this, then make sure to click the bell too. Anyway, that's enough talking, now let's get straight into it. So if you're currently starting your projects by using a basic empty FL Studio template, then you're definitely doing yourself an injustice and adding hours onto your workflow every week. All those little jobs like routing instruments to the mixer, adding effects to each separate track, and colouring and naming everything may not seem like big things, but over the space of a week, this will effectively be slowing you down and sometimes even breaking your creative workflow. That's why I find it essential to have a good working template ready for every time that I open my door. Having tracks that are already routed to my mixer and then having those tracks already routed to my buses and sends are important to me, so when I open FL Studio, all I have left to do is create. If you'd like to download my template, then I'm going to leave a link in the video description where you can do so. So first let me show you how the template actually works, and then I'm going to go ahead and show you exactly how I made it for those of you that want to build your own template from scratch. Alright, so first I'm going to go over the channel rack and how I've got it set out. The first thing I have here is 6 instrument tracks. I find that when I'm making samples, it's not too often that I use more than 6 core instruments, so I thought that this would be a good place to start. You'll also see that I've color coded all of the different groups of instruments to make it easy to identify them. Next, I've added a slot for all of the drum elements that I know that I'm going to be using, and in my case that's a closed hat, an open hat, a snare, 2 percussions and a kick. Then these pink slots at the bottom are for my bass tracks. I tend to use multiple basses in my beats, so I've gone with an 808, a sub bass as well as a synth bass. All of these tracks are then going into the mixer, which is going to save me time and prevent me from having to break my creative work state to do this during the session. Next I'm going to go over the mixer and show you how that works. So I've already told you that all of my instrument tracks are going straight into the mixer, but what I've then done is added each instrument group to its own bus. I have a melody bus where all of my melodic elements are going to go, a drum bus where all of the drum tracks are going to be sent to, a low end bus where all of my bass instruments are going to be sent to, and then lastly I have an effects bus. Then this last track on the right is my pre-master, which everything's going to go to before it goes to the main master track. Essentially what these buses are going to do is take all of the audio that's coming out of a specific group and put it all through one mixer track before it goes to the master. This is going to be extremely useful for producers that like to put the same effect on multiple tracks, and it's going to save your CPU. And another reason that this is useful is it's going to allow you to monitor the combined volume of a certain group of instruments. The pre-master track is going to take the signal from all of my group buses and serve as a last stop before the master channel. Personally, I don't really like to put any effects on my master track, so this is the place where I'm going to be adding stuff like limiters and clippers. Over on the right hand side I have my send tracks, and these tracks are for effects that I know I'm going to be using a lot, like reverbs, delays and saturation. If you're using one reverb plugin on lots of different tracks, then eventually this is going to add up and you could start experiencing performance issues. What these send tracks are going to allow you to do is have only one instance of the plugin that can then be mixed in with the dry signal from your instrument tracks or even your group tracks. All you need to do to get this effect to play on your sound is select the track that you want the effect to be on, and then you can use this knob at the bottom of the mixer to mix in the wet with the dry signal. There are definitely times where I feel it's more appropriate to have the plugin directly on the insert, but this is a nice option to have too. So that's the ins and outs of how the template works. Now I'm going to go ahead and remake this from scratch so you can see exactly how it's made. So the first thing I did was came right over to the end of the mixer and selected the 4 tracks that are furthest to the right. From here all you need to do is right click, come down to where it says dock to, and then we want to dock these to the right. This is going to add a nice separator to the mixer and ensure that these 4 tracks can be seen at all times. Next you just want to right click on these tracks and then change colour and select yourself a colour that you like. Now all that's left to do to these tracks is to name them. Now I'm going to have mine as reverb, delay, saturation and distortion, but obviously this is going to depend on what effects you have on them. Now for my send tracks, I'm going to take the next 4 available mixer tracks, right click, again I'm going to come to dock to, but this time I'm going to dock them to the left. Again I'm just going to right click and change the colour of these tracks and select a different colour. Then just like we did with the sends, you want to rename these. So I'm going to have a melody bus, a drum bus, a low end bus, and finally a pre-master. So now I have all my sends set up and my group buses, but I currently have nothing actually going into the mixer. So what I'm going to do now is make some placeholder tracks inside of the channel rack. So like I said earlier, I like to have 6 instrument tracks, a total of 6 drum tracks, and then 3 bass tracks. So what I'm going to do is just clone this sampler track until I have 15 tracks in the channel rack. Now that I have my 15 spaces inside the channel rack, I just need to go ahead and name them accordingly. So there we go, I now have all of my tracks named, and next I just want to go ahead and add colours to each of the different groups of instruments. So first I'm just going to hold control and then select all of my elements in my melodic group. From here I'm going to come up to the arrow in the channel rack and go to colour selected, and I want to choose a gradient. Then I'm just going to go ahead and repeat that for my drums and my low end too. So now that all of my tracks are named and coloured, I'm just going to select them all and press Ctrl and L to link them to an available mixer track. Next I'm going to come to the first track in my drum group and right click and hit this separator button, and then I'm going to do the same thing again for my bass. This is going to add these nice blocks in the mixer that's going to keep everything separate from each other. So all that's left to do now is to add all of these different groups into the correct buses and then put everything through the send tracks. So first I'm just going to select all of my melodic elements, come down to this arrow below the melody bus, right click it, and then I want to select route to this track only. Then I'm going to repeat this for my drum tracks, but this time I'm going to route them to the drum bus. And then lastly I'm going to do the exact same thing to my bass. Next I want to select these 3 buses and then right click on the arrow below the pre-master and select route to this track only. So now all of these separate tracks are going through their respected bus, and then all of these buses are then going through the pre-master. To get all of these tracks to go through the sends, you just want to hold control and select all of the tracks that are in the mixer. Right click on the arrow below each send track, and this time you want to press sidechain to this track. You don't want to click sidechain to this track only, because that's only going to allow each track to go through one send, and then you want to repeat this for all of your sends. So there you have it, you now have a nice working FL Studio template. What I'm going to do now is just grab some audio and throw it into the playlist and route it to one of these tracks so you can see exactly how each section of the template works. So I've dropped some audio into the playlist and I've routed it to track 1. So when I hit play, you'll notice the waveforms coming up through instrument 1, through the melody bus, and also through the pre-master. And this is good because you now have 3 layers at which you can add effects. You can add effects onto the insert level, the bus level, or the pre-master level. Now I'm going to hit play and start messing with some of the dials on my sends so you can see exactly how they work. So that is going to bring us to the end of today's video. Hopefully you found this video useful, and if you did, then make sure to smash the thumbs up button before you leave. If you'd like to download the free FLP for this template, then you can do so by using the link in the video's description. If you're new to the channel, then please consider hitting the subscribe button and click the bell next to it too so you can be notified every time that I upload. Massive shout out to anybody that made it all the way to the end of the video. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.